Mato here, this time with a Brig guide. For those of you that haven't watched my hero guides before, I like to mainly focus on what skills help me get better with the hero, as well as what my thought process is while playing them. I think it could be more beneficial to someone that's trying to learn, in comparison to spending time on general tips like aim better or position better. Don't get me wrong, all of that's important too, but that's the type of stuff you'll learn over time after repeated mistakes, and you can be sure that your teammates will point it out too. Anyway, back to Brig. Over the course of the years, Brig has seen loads of nerfs and some very slight buffs. Overall, it seems like Blizzard couldn't find an optimal way to balance her. That's until they landed on the idea of a slight rework during the launch of Overwatch 2. When she was first released, she completely changed the way the game was played, and was a leading factor as to why Role Q was introduced. Since then, people have debated back and forth on how they think she should be played, because back when she first released, she was so strong that she was basically another tank that just happened to have the ability to heal her team, which I believe was what Blizzard intended, but players were not happy to say the least. Fast forward to now, and she's highly considered a throw pick in lower ranks, and while she is appreciated in the higher ranks, I think she is still very underutilized, minus the few that specialize in playing her. She's not nearly as tanky as she once was, and with that change, most believe, came a shift in her playstyle, while some still cling to their old habits, with not as much success. I honestly don't think that there is one right answer as to how she should be played, but seeing as she is my most played hero, I wanted to give my take on how I play her, and also try to explain my general mindset when picking her. So, when I pick Brig, it's for one of two reasons. Reason one is because my team's backline is getting harassed heavily by someone like a Genji, Tracer, or Winston. This is the reason that most high-level players recommend picking her, and for good reason. Reason two is that I'm playing with a very in-your-face type of tank player, one that doesn't waste any time closing the distance on the enemy. A lot of people pick Brig only for reason one, but I don't see as many recommending to pick her for reason two, which, to be honest, I think it's where she shines the most. She may not be as tanky as she once was, but that doesn't mean she can't be played on the front lines anymore. To accomplish this though, you can't just take charge and tell your tank player to look at you, you're the tank now. No, you have to play with your tank. Now, I don't mean that you have to verbally communicate with them, although it probably helps. The strategy I use to make playing on the front lines work involves a lot of switching back and forth with your tank to give them a break when they're low. What you'll do is play alongside your tank or a bit behind them, depending on the situation. And as they get low on health, that's when you take their position and become the tank. That's right, you don't back up when your tank is low to let them recover. You'll instead help keep up the pressure that your tank created by switching places so that you don't lose space and have to reset. If you know what tools your opponents have left at their disposal, don't let your fear of dying get in the way. It catches so many opposing tank players off guard, and a lot of them trip up to the point they end up dying because they don't expect it, or respect it, I should say. They don't expect a Brig player to be able to stand on her own against them, but to do this, you can't just stand there flailing around your flail. You have to play a bit slippery in order to survive long enough while up there. This involves using your whip shot to knock your enemy back, and using your flail often enough to keep your passive going, while also saving your shield bash to back off when your tank is healthy again, and you're not. All of that on top of another concept that I'd like to call shield dancing, which might be what everyone calls it, I don't know. What shield dancing is only bringing up your shield when you know heavy damage is about to come through, and in the downtime between that heavy damage, that's when you're swinging to constantly keep your passive up. A simple example of how to use shield dancing well is when playing against a Sigma player. Sigma's primary fire has a pretty long cooldown before he can fire again, and so you can time your shield with the rhythm of his attacks and swing at him in between that downtime in order to maximize your damage uptime. Just be careful of Dwayne. This concept can be used to block loads of damage, but against some heroes it takes a lot more practice. It's much more difficult against heroes that don't have as big of a delay to their large damage sources. Mastering this involves the same concept that I went over in my Ana guide. You'll have to observe player behaviors and look for any patterns so that it becomes less about actually knowing the timing and more about predictions. And if your timing is off, your shield will still block some damage anyway, or it won't block any, but that just means it can simply be used to block the next bit of damage, as long as you're not dead. You can always pop rally if you think you're in danger. So that's how you hold your own on the front line as Brig. But be warned that another thing you'll want to keep in the back of your head is where your other support is positioned, and whether they're able to support you or not. But that tip doesn't just apply to playing Brig, it applies to everyone. Of course, all of this can only work if you're also not playing against a tank that prefers to dive your backline. That's where the more traditional Brig playstyle comes in handy. This just involves protecting your other support and relying on them to keep everyone else alive. The unfortunate thing is, the lower you are in the ranks, the less likely your other support will be able to keep up with the pace and pressure, and your team will probably be taking more damage than if you were in a higher level lobby lobby. Not only that, but while you're protecting your support, depending on how far back you're both playing, the rest of your team might not be getting the benefits of your Inspire passive, which makes it extra hard for a low level player to support the entire team. Since the enemy team can switch heroes on the fly, knowing when your current playstyle isn't working anymore and switching to the other playstyle is a very valuable skill to learn. But if neither are working out, it's probably time to switch. So that's how I play Brig. The main takeaway in all my guides is that to get better, you actually want to focus less on your own play and more on how your opponents play in order to catch them off guard. Put yourself in their shoes. But before ending this video, I wanted to go over some quick tips to help you play Brig better. If you're using your shield bash for travel distance, jump before you use it to go a little further. Try not to use all 3 of your repair packs at once. I know it can be difficult at times, but it's something to keep in mind. This tip isn't something that's set in stone. Keeping your Inspire up, aka your passive, should be one of your priorities. It helps a lot with saving that 3rd repair pack that I mentioned in the previous tip. Holding your shield up until it breaks is generally a bad idea, but I understand that it can't be avoided at times. That's all for this video, but don't forget, we lost because they had a mercy and we didn't. GG.